Things have been moving fast in Governor Cuomo's ever expanding set of scandals over the past 48 hours, from the news that his office apparently reached out to a number of different former employees to see if they had spoken to the first accuser, which seems weird and intimidating. And it turns out that a former aide says that it was in fact intimidating and she felt bewildered by it. To yesterday, during an emergency meeting, the state assembly announcing that it is going to be starting an impeachment inquiry involving both the allegations of sexual harassment and assault, as well as the nursing death scandal. To about 40% of his entire party's members in the assembly and the Senate signing on, asking for him to immediately resign. And then there was this morning, when Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that after 2 accounts of sexual assault, 4 accounts of harassment, the Attorney General's investigation finding the governor's admin hid nursing home data from the legislature and public, saying we agree with the 55+ members of the New York State Legislature that the governor must resign. That was a letter that she put out with Congressman Bowman. Then at least 11 of the Democratic House representatives from New York called for him to resign, and including Jerry Nadler, by the way. And then just as we were going live, Senators Schumer and Gillibrand both also said that it's time for the governor to resign. As of this afternoon, he said that he would not, which is what they always say until they do. But he seems like a fighter. Cenk and Francesca, what do you think? Is he gonna stick around no matter how many people tell him if Biden gets involved?
Yeah, I'm really curious what you think, Francesca. There's one part of this that I'm a little torn about. So that's already interesting, right? So there's nothing that I'm torn about in regards to Andrew Cuomo. He's an establishment Democrat extraordinaire, and he's been wrong on so many issues, and he's attacked progressives and good-meaning people behind the scenes in 1,000 different ways. And he's a political apparatchik extraordinaire. Now he's claiming like, oh, I'm just a regular Joe. Dude, your name is Cuomo. Your dad was governor, you're governor. Don't pretend you're one of us, okay? You're an ultimate insider, and you use the insider system to attack all of your opponents. You've done it for decades. And as Anna keeps pointing out, rightfully so, the guy cut $400 million from Medicaid. Actually, overall, the cuts were slated to be $2.5 billion. They had to talk about him doing it in the middle of the pandemic, delayed for after the pandemic. But some of the cuts that he had done earlier was the reason why they didn't have enough hospital beds. And that's why he then took the people from the hospitals, put them in the nursing homes, and then everybody died in the nursing homes, and then he had to lie about it. So for all those reasons, he already was a terrible governor from a perspective of people who, I was gonna say progressives, but really anybody, okay? The progressive critique of him is correct, is my point. On the sexual harassment issue, the only thing I have here is that, and that's why I'm curious what both of you guys think about it. Part of me thinks, okay, yes, but let's go through the process. Like, so the last allegation is groping. If that's true, he should be gone within the minute, right? So that's not a question. The question is, how true are these? Now, six is a lot, right? On the other hand, if you remember with Al Franken, it had piled up to be a big number, but every one of them was like a fake picture. We took a picture once and he put his hand around my shoulder. And they were like 11. I'm like, no, that's not 11. Like, right? But let's have an investigation. So there is a part of me that says, are we sure that these are all true 100% that we can act on it? And I get the other point, which is they don't all have to be 100% true. There's 6 of them. It looks like we've got an obvious pattern here. So Francesca, what do you think?
Oh yeah, no, there's when this first broke weeks ago, I was like, I've never been more sure that there was a giant iceberg underneath this very, very tiny little tip that we're seeing sticking out of the water here. Like, you knew that Cuomo, and I'm just, it's his, I don't know. I'm not trying to be anti-Italian as someone. I'm like, don't go to the Mafia Sopranos things, but like the guy, in clearly and exactly all the reason that you said, in the ways that he's bullied around his political opponents for years, in the ways that he is so Trumpian, in that he's gotten everything from his father, and then also in the cavalier ways, because some of these incidents were while he was rising to stardom, which I gotta say, man, it's been real fun to watch him fall. As someone who was never on board for the rise, who was like, oh, look, it's a politician doing the absolute bare minimum. The absolute bare minimum, the thing you should do, believing in science, locking things down, even though I don't even think he did that amazing of a job. Yes, I said it. Like, it's been nice to watch, like, oh, here's the real Cuomo. And like, it's funny to me that there are so many Cuomos around this country. There are so many sort of middling, mediocre, like legacy politicians, dynastic politicians who skate by. They assault a couple people, they bully their opponents, but they kind of then they get applauded. They come out with a book and they're fine. But I feel like the meteoric rise that he had under COVID and the way that he laid into it so much just set himself up. It's like it's just the way that Trump could have been absolutely fine just doing cameos on Home Alone 5 or whatever it was, and then he had to go and run for president. And now we're looking at his taxes. So look, here's my thing about resignation. I feel like it's a little bit of an escape hatch. And I think when it comes to actually having an investigation, and as painful as it is, like having the people who came forward, testify or discuss it, absolutely like not, or at least have an investigation. I don't know what it would look like. It feels like there would be more accountability. And I think that so many creeps and so many predators get away in the workplace because there's no accountability to begin with. So I'm not even sure if immediate resignation is accountability. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, actually, Francesca, I love that point. And that gets another problem in the political system. So Cuomo keeps saying, I want the Attorney General to finish the investigation, that's Letitia James. And if we all believed that our democracy was on the level and that politicians weren't politicians, I'd say definitely finish the investigation because I want to know if he did it. And if he did it, then that gives us closure. As opposed to, well, he resigned and he get to deny it forever because then they won't bother finishing the investigation, etc. Right? But the problem is, I don't trust politicians. So is Cuomo, part of the reason Cuomo is doing it is because he wants to delay it, and then he thinks if I can just delay it, I'll be able to do 1,000 other political maneuvers to avoid it. And then he keeps saying he wants it so much that I begin to wonder, is Letitia James doesn't look like a political ally of Cuomo based on her previous experience. Right. But what if she is? What if Cuomo knows something we don't know? And then they do a BS investigation. Yeah. And then those women, suffer a second injustice.
So I do think that, and I just think it's important to mention though that like the investigation of a sexual assault or harassment claim it's so hard because it is always a he said, she said type of situation. And which is why we have things like the slogan, believe survivors, right? And believe women, because you have predators who will always deny it. I do not foresee a future in which Andrew Cuomo admits anything. That I can be sure of. We might hear more about the stories from the staffers and the people who he victimized, but I do not foresee him being like, oh yeah, I guess I remember doing that. No, it's not gonna happen. So again, I just wanna set that up that it's not a fair, you're never gonna get to the truth kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's also true. That's why it's challenging. But now let's go to the political analysis. He's done. Schumer ain't coming out against Cuomo if he doesn't think Cuomo's done. So you can say a lot about Schumer and whether he's earnest or not, but on internal Democratic politics, Schumer is not a rookie. He's been around the block a couple of times. He knows this part of it really well. This is Schumer saying, nah. He's not, and not that way. No, to be fair, Schumer likes Cuomo. And so he wouldn't rub it in. And if he's coming out against Cuomo, a fellow establishment Democrat ally for decades, that means he thinks Cuomo is definitely done. And if Schumer and Gillibrand think he's definitely done, he's probably definitely done.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.